All right, we are here. We got a lot of exciting, Brenden. We're going to talk about Hometown Heroes. It's back.
Finally.
Only I think I saw the first agents and lenders and realtors. People have been talking about this since like February.
Yes. And we're all waiting for July 1st because July 1st, here it comes. Get ready. Nah.
Well, you know what? I think a lot of people, they got the excitement. They heard DeSantis had put it in his proposed budget, but he's not the one that signs off everything else. And everything wasn't signed. Like they actually you're talking the Florida, Senate and how like all of it got signed right at the last minute of July 1st. I think it was June 30th it got signed.
Yeah.
And then it still had to be reviewed and, red line by DeSantis. So he's the final, and he didn't do it until like 2 weeks after. And then we're like, yes, it's going to be here. And then we got that update from Florida Housing saying, guys, we're not going to be ready until
sometime in August.
Sometime in August.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a date.
Yes, we do. August 18th.
August 18th. And this is the great
18th.
part. So right now we can pre-approve clients. We have a date.
Yes.
But we're missing one key piece. One thing that's going to make it a little bit of a challenge, and that is that right now we don't have the rates. Everything is what we're guesstimating.
Yeah, because you cannot lock in until the 18th, the morning of the 18th. One good thing with Friday's job revisions, we saw rates take a nice dive.
Yes, we did. And if I were to guesstimate right now, because we're just going to look at Florida housing as a whole, where their other programs like the, down payment assistance programs are at, we're seeing it anywhere between 6.75 all the way to 7.5 for the different programs, depending on if it's FHA or conventional and so forth. So I think a good barometer is we're going to expect somewhere in that 7 to 7.125 range right now, assuming rates don't get worse or they don't get better over the coming weeks if they were to stay consistent. And that's a good basis point. So we can at least, if lenders are pre-approving or reviewing, there's at least enough data out there now that we can say, okay, here's what you would qualify for. But there were a couple changes.
Yes.
So nothing major.
No, I agree with them doing this. One is they went back to certain occupations where they had opened it up to anyone who had a job in Florida, and that just went kind of crazy. I mean, the money just, what was it, about 5 weeks, I think $100 million was basically used up. But now it's who it originally was designed for, which is your hometown heroes, your police officers, your teachers, your nurses, the people in those service industries, who you want to have live locally. That's the whole key. Like we're working with a police officer, and one of his requirements is he has to live within 30 miles of downtown Orlando, of the central station. So you want to be able to help those people, because it was interesting. I was actually listening to another podcast, and they made a good point today, because new home prices are actually lower than resale prices, which hasn't happened in years. But the thing is you think about it, it kind of makes sense because they're further out from the main place where people want to live. Okay. So the closer you get, the more expensive it is. So to help offset that expense for these police officers, the teachers, the nurses, you got to help. We're helping them out a little bit by helping them with that down payment, helping them with those closing costs. And I think that's a great thing to do for those people.
Yeah, and when you talk about the hometown heroes, what it's meant, the employment types, I was looking at a lot of the data there. And what I notice is there's a lot of clarification this time. I sat through the underwriting training with the state of Florida Housing put on. A lot of clarification into what exactly they're looking for, because the first time they rolled it out, there's a lot of confusion. It was like, okay, well, if you work for a healthcare provider, but you weren't a licensed CNA or this and that, or a nurse, or the first time they rolled it out, it was like you couldn't qualify if you didn't have special licensing. And then they took away all the employment type qualification. It was like, if you just work in the state of Florida, you're good for full time. Now it's full time, 40 hours. But if it's specific, so if it's like healthcare employee, which I really like this change, because it's exactly that. It's like, okay, well, if you work for a healthcare provider and you're an employee, no more like, oh my gosh, like, do I qualify? Do I not? It's like, hey, you are a healthcare. Now, where the clarification kind of came on this was we have to actually be a healthcare worker. Like, so you can't work for, say, a medical supply company.
Okay.
You have to work for a provider.
Say Advent Health.
Exactly. Like, they provide, like, there's actual care there you have to work for. Advent Health, you can work for a doctor's office. Like, where, like, and I kind of, the way they kind of explained it was like, would a person come to you to get service for healthcare?
Okay.
Right. If they do, typically you're going to be good.
Yep.
Like, now, if they don't, that's where it's like, and I was like, okay, that little bit of clarification for all the different job types and everything really helped kind of clean it up. And it also made it more accessible because you mentioned, like, the whole point is to be able to help with housing and options for people that are local hometown heroes or work for these where you don't want to be an hour away or 2 hours away and so forth. So now we have that. And it doesn't really matter the specific role as long as you work for those companies. Now the income, this was another one that we were curious.
Oh boy, was this kind of nice. This kind of nice?
I mean, it got bumped up and it's 150% of the median income. So, like, you know, we're in the Central Florida market. Brenden, what does that look like income wise?
Income wise, that's going to bring us up to $158,000.
Of qualifying is basically if they make underneath that, they're going to be able to take advantage of it.
They're going to be able to take advantage of it, which you think about is that really is kind of the median of where you need to be these days to afford the median home value, which is $400,000 at the current rates in the Central Florida area. So the numbers actually make sense. We're not going to have to strain to fit people into a house. Where you're right at that, you know, oh, I'd really like to look at this $425,000 house. Well, you can only qualify for $350,000. I think it's going to be able to open us up and allow us to provide, you know, really homes that people want to live, you know. And when you look at the overall market currently, you know, our median right now is $422,000. So at that $158,000 and below, you're going to be in that median ballpark, which for right now, also for the sellers, this could be a nice little boom that they've been waiting for.
Some assistance, some help to get buyers off the edge. We know it's going to have some demand to it, and it's going to get buyers off the edge a little bit. So the whole premise, Hometown Heroes, is $35,000 up to $35,000, minimum of $10,000. But basically, it's 5% of the loan amount is given as it's essentially a silent second lien. There's no payment being made, no interest accruing or anything. It sits in the background. It's not forgiven with this program. There are some other benefits where, you know, certain like doc stamps on the deed are exempt, like on the mortgage. So there are some pieces where you have some exemptions that save some money for the client as well. But then you get that piece where it's like, okay, it's up to 5%, and that can really apply. I looked at the guys. The only thing that kind of it was pretty straightforward. Nothing that jumped out at me of like, okay, where's the gotcha? Like, you had to worry about this time of like, what was going to be the new gotcha? Was there going to be something else out there?
You're always waiting for those in these types of programs. Is what's going to be the sticking point for them.
So, and I felt for the client, there wasn't anything that jumped out. You know, is it a program that the debt gets forgiven? No, but that wasn't the design of the program. The program was to help people get into the home. As values go up and increase, you do have the opportunity. Now, is it a program where, if you have the money and you don't need the down payment assistance, that maybe you should look out? There might be situations that it might make sense to say, hey, it doesn't make sense to take advantage of the program. But that's something where talk to a professional like myself or whoever you talk to, they should be able to guide you on, does it make sense or does it not make sense?
One nice thing that you got to remember too is it still allows us to get seller concession. You know, it's that you know, possible 3%, 4%, depending on the loan program. Remember, we can still get seller concession on top of it. So we can possibly utilize to get a larger down payment for you.
Yep. And the key there is exactly what you said. If you can get that seller concession potentially and utilize those funds just for down payment, that's going to reduce your monthly expenditure. That's going to make it to where you're able to function a little bit more, have a little bit more buying power and so forth. The one thing that you can't do with this is you can't use seller concessions to buy down the rate because there's just one rate is set by the state. It is what it is. There's no changing it. There's no buy downs, anything like that. So you do have to live with that. One caveat that I did see in the underwriting, and I'll mention this, is this was new, is if you've used any Florida housing product in the past, you're not eligible for this time.
Oh.
So this was different. So this is a new one. But I kind of feel like in the spirit of what its purpose, it makes sense because they're basically saying like, hey, this is a first-time home buyer, and the way they're treating it, so first-time home buyers, you haven't owned a home in the last 3 years. So in this situation, they're kind of saying, hey, we're going to take it a step further. Like if you haven't owned a home in the last 3 years, that makes you a first-time home buyer. But we don't want you taking advantage of this program and having already used something, taken advantage from state funds before, sold that home, lived. And what was funny is I saw this rule change and I laughed because I had a client recently that they bought a home back, in the mid-teens of, like 2014, 2015. And then when COVID happened and everything, they sold their home, right? They sold their home during the boom. And literally when I called them and talked to them first time, their answer was, I'm about to hit 3 years. I want to go down payment assistance through the state again like I did before. And I laughed because I was like, wow, like this is a thought process people are having, and they've kind of done that. And in the state this time is kind of saying, hey, like we don't, like we love that you're first time. We want to help, but we want to make sure we're helping people for the very first time getting the home, not people that have figured out ways to game the system maybe. And maybe it's not game the system. Maybe there's something, a hardship or this and that. But I think there was kind of like hey, there's got to be some line in the sand. And that was the line the state was willing to take.
That's a fair line.
It's reasonable.
I think it's reasonable. Now, the one group that can own a home and still use it is the veterans. Is that
correct?
Is that still correct?
That's still correct. So, with the veteran, like they don't have to be, they have that exemption and so forth. So that's definitely a piece that they're still able to. Funds $50 million. All right. August 18th. Brenden, give me the lowdown. What do you think?
August 18th, you're going to have 25 million locked up by the end of the day.
Okay, so the question begats is, if we've got 27 million hometown hero, we think, and I don't know if August 18th, is that like, I think it's a Tuesday.
It's a Monday, isn't it?
It is a Monday, so
Monday.
it's a Monday.
Yeah, that Monday morning.
So I think by the 22nd, 35 million gone, 1 week?
1 week.
Is reserved. Not necessarily gone.
Because you got to think how many people have been sitting waiting for this. I know I've run into a couple people. I know I've had the conversation with a lady who called me because she was actually under contract, hoping for the funds, and her contract actually runs out on the 15th. And she just asked, is there anything I can do? And I said, no. I said, the only thing you can do is go back to your lender, go back to your agent, go back to the seller and say, hey, this is what's happened. We all know this has happened. We jumped the gun. Can you work with us? And I told her I would probably get an extension for a month because at that time we still hadn't had the 18th.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, well, worst case scenario, maybe mid-month, and you still got to go through the underwriting, So yeah, even if she's pre-approved, you still got a little bit of time there.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you may want to ask to mid-September, but she also had to be out of her place by mid-August. So it was a conundrum of mistakes. And that's unfortunately, I think we've seen that a lot of times, and everyone gets anxious, and I can understand it completely, because it has been a good program. I've used it for clients. And you want to help these people, especially for the first time home buyers, some of the best people in the world. I mean, the look on their faces when they buy a home and you're sitting there and they're in tears at the closing table because they never thought they could buy a home. One of the best closings I ever had was a single mom, December 31st. We had worked with her. We got her lined up, and on December 31st, New Year's Eve, she got her home. And no one thought she could do it. But we just sat there. We worked with her for 6-7 months, and we got her over. And she was just in tears. And the feeling, the reward. People ask, why do you do this? It's the money. No, it's not. It's the money's nice, but quite honestly, helping the people that other people don't want to help, that's the most fun. The challenging ones are the ones that are fun, because they appreciate it. Mm-hmm. They really do. And that's people. The thing I think I would say to people is, don't be afraid to ask about these programs. Don't. They're here to help you. There's no stigma attached to these programs. The Hometown Hero, and the nice thing is the Hometown Heroes is just one.
Yeah.
One program. We have other programs that, you and I have looked through that we can help people with. And we're willing to take you and walk you through. Hey, we were just going through earlier a client who's a little bit low on their credit score that we're going to have to take. We're going to have to take a little bit of time. They may not get the Hometown Heroes program. That's okay. But what if we get them into the county program that gets them $10,000? Maybe it's not the 16 or 18 that's average. Maybe it's just the 10,000. That 10,000 can change their life. And they can go from being perpetual renters to homeowners. And that's our American dream. That's what we want. That's why I'm in this. I know that's why you're in the business too. That's what we want.
And it's exactly that. It's, there's a lot of pieces to it, and these programs are fantastic because they give people the opportunity to explore, to find, is it the best of everything every single time? No, like the programs aren't perfect. They're going to have their negatives, but they're going to have a lot of positives that are going to outweigh those negatives for the right person. And the reality is it's hard. It's hard sometimes to save up for the funds and to pay rent when rent's the way it is, and to provide for your kids. And it's, I laugh, I hear some of the different things or the stories, and it's like, oh yeah, just don't do X, Y, and Z, and don't do this. And it's like, well, try to explain to a single mom with their son or their daughter that wants to do the sport that they shouldn't be put them into that youth program.
We'd love to, but we had to make a choice between saving for a home or putting you in there.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's not a discussion anybody wants. But it just goes to the whole affordability thing. And when the average person in Central Florida has to earn $114,000 a year to afford a medium-priced home, that's a problem. That's a serious problem. And do I know how we correct it? No, I don't right now. I wish I did, but I don't. And it's frustrating sometimes. It's really frustrating.
Yeah. When you say that, I can't help but think when, I go back to 2015, 2016, and I think about what I used to when I talked to a client. I'd be like, oh, you make $45,000 a year? Okay. Mm-hmm. You got $6,000 in the bank? Okay. You got a 640 credit score? Okay, you can buy a home.
Mm-hmm.
It is not that way.
No.
like that used to be I would be like, that's a client.
Yeah.
We would all anybody in the industry a decade ago would be like, oh, you make 45, 50? Great, you're a buyer.
You're a buyer.
Single mom, you're a teacher? Great, you're a buyer. There's enough, we knew that there was inventory and housing that supported that. But the problem is you go a decade later, and that house that used to be 120 is now what, 290?
Yeah.
Now affordability, and that's something we've all, we know, it's hard to beat up. We know, we get it, supply shortage, COVID, all these things, it all plays into it. But, sometimes these programs, they're the option in the scenario that's going to help when there's no other option. So we're really excited to be able to provide it. I'm excited it's back. It's been in talks for so long that it's just, I'm just happy to know, hey, it's back, it's done. We can actually offer it. We did what was right. We didn't sell this product before it was available. We waited till we had cold, hard facts, and we can actually make sure we can deliver on that, because that's what a true advisor does, right?
Yep.
They pause, they make sure they have what's right, and they give you the right information the first time, because they don't want you to set up for failure. And this is the biggest. I was listening to, and I'm going to end on this, and one of our team members, Ashley, she was on another podcast recently, and she was talking about, and she was asked a question: if you can change the mortgage industry tomorrow, what would you change? What's one thing you can change? And I thought it was so interesting, and I'd love your quick take on this. But she made a comment, and you and I have talked about this before. She's like, oh, I think there should be apprentices for loan officers. I think every loan officer, every LO in the industry, so people in my role should have to do an apprenticeship for 2 to 3 years before they can be an LO. And she just paused and she said, it's because it's the biggest purchase most people are going to ever make.
I agree 100%. 100%. You look at the way appraisers are done. Appraisers have, I may get this wrong, I believe it's 2-year apprenticeship.
I think so.
I think it's 2-year apprenticeship. I think for realtors need to be able to do 2 years of apprenticeship, because number one, we lose about 80% of it to begin with. 2, when people don't do their job, there's big mistakes made. And like you said, I'm an advisor. And that's the role I take, is when I'm showing someone a house, it's not just here's the kitchen, here's this. It's okay. What's the HOA? What are the roofs? What are the utilities? How old is this roof? How old is the AC? What problems have they had in the past? Have any changes to the house been done, and have they been permitted properly? I mean, there's so many things that can affect how things go, and then understanding the market. Both of our jobs, they are not 9-to-5 jobs. People think, oh, you're your own boss. You set your own hours. Are you kidding me? You take the 7 o'clock phone call in the morning, in the night, the 10 o'clock phone call at night. You get a call Saturday morning when you're supposed to go someplace with your family, and it's like, we want to see this house. We're pre-approved. Can you help us out? What do? It's you're on call 24/7. But this is the life I chose, though, because of the joy I get from helping. I love it, and I love educating. I want them to understand the whole process. That, hey, there's a lot involved here when we look through it, and yeah, it is going to be your most expensive, but if I do everything right, it's going to be the easiest. I joke with my clients, and I tell them, hey, if I've done everything right, week before closing, you're going to forget my name because you haven't had to call me because everything's set. And they kind of laugh. I'm like, no, if I've done my job right, you should not have to talk to me a week before closing because everything, and that's it. It's a joy. It's just a joy doing this stuff.